Hi everybody, Mrs. Francisco here. Hope everyone's okay. We're going into week 4 of lockdown. Hope you're all keeping safe. I hope you've done lots of work. Hope you're not going out too far. Just doing your daily exercise. Okay, so over the next few lessons, we're going to be talking about different types of photography. There are more than what I'm going to talk to you about, but I think that it's really important that we'll look at the most important ones, but I think it's really important that you have an idea of the different types so you can focus on one and you can see if it's something that you would like to progress with further. It's also good to know the kind of features of these photos, just to help you get the best photos possible. So let's have a look. What types of photography are there? Have a think. What different types of photography do you know about? Okay, so on the next slide, I'm going to show you a few different types of photography. So we've got portrait photography, wedding, sport, journalism, documentary, fashion, fine art, and wildlife, okay? So they are 8 of some of the main ones that you're going to find. And what's interesting is you can look at some of them and learn about them and realise that actually there's not a lot of difference between them, but there are differences, and that's what I'm going to try and talk to you about today. So today we're going to be looking at fashion and then wildlife, okay? So fashion photography. Okay, I've got 5 different examples of fashion photography. So what is fashion photography? It mainly focuses on displaying fashion items and trends, okay? You're going to find them most prominently in adverts, so either adverts in magazines, adverts on billboards, or in fashion magazines, okay? Articles and shoots. What's really interesting is that primarily the types of fashion photos that we're going to find are photos that are aimed to sell products, okay? So they might be part of an advert, such as for, I don't know, like Topshop or Primark. But there are other types of fashion photography which are there just because the photos look amazing, okay? So obviously, designers, makeup artists, hair artists, and the photographers all work together to create a fashion shoot. But the photographer is the person who is in charge of the shoot, okay? The photographer is the person who, once everyone's got their clothes on, everyone's got their hair done, got their makeup done, the photographer is the person who decides how to capture it. And that's mainly because two people don't see the world in the same way, okay? So there's no point in the clothes designer telling the photographer how to take the photos. Ultimately, it's up to the photographer to decide, okay? And as a fashion photographer, you need to have a good understanding of trends. You need to know what's going on in the fashion world. You need to know what's popular. So fashion photography really started around the same time that cameras were created. There's a book that was published in 1886, so quite some time ago, and it shows 288 photos of an Italian countess in her royal outfits. So that is the first known fashion book magazine, okay? And if you bring it a little bit more to more modern times, I'd say that in the 20th century, a fashion magazine became particularly popular. Okay, so you think of fashion magazines such as Condé Nast, Kinfolk, Vogue, okay, where all the big photographers and the big models are having their artwork shown. And then if we think about nowadays, fashion photography can be very lucrative, okay? You can make a lot of money as a fashion photographer. It's very competitive. You have to be the best of the best to get your photos in those magazines. But lots of people are doing really good things and they're making money, okay? And obviously, if you're able to get your work published in a magazine, it's going to open a lot of doors in your career, and you're going to be able to do some exciting work in your career. So someone I'm going to show you, one famous fashion photographer is Patrick de Marcellier. Okay, he was born in 1943, which means that he is 77. He is still working as a photographer. And there are 3 of his famous photos. All of the photos are really striking. When you look on his website, you will see that most of his photos are in black and white, okay? Because black and white makes the image look more dramatic. The image in the middle there, what I love about that photo is how it contrasts the red and the blue. But obviously black and white also contrasts. So, what else has he done? He has used movement. Obviously, photos are still, but as with the picture on the left, it looks like the girl is pulling the horns of the bull. Okay, so that's given an impression of of movement. And it cuts the stillness of the image up. And you can see again on the girl on the swing, the way that she's pulling in the rope makes it look like it's moving. She's created movement in a still shape. What's most important in a fashion photograph is that the garments, so the clothes, or the makeup is front and centre. They're the things that you need to look at first. Once you've looked at those, you obviously then look at other parts of the image. But the clothes are the most important. And we can also think about rule of thirds. You know that rule that we talked about last time? Rule of thirds is applicable in all of these photos. You can see on the left-hand side, she is in the right-hand third and the bull is in the left-hand third. Here, the girl is in the right-hand third and the horizon cuts the bottom third. And again here on the right-hand side, she is in the right third. And it just makes the image look more interesting. It captures your imagination more. Finally, all of the models have created shapes with their body, okay? So, the girl looks like she's pulling the bull. Her body is in the same shape or similar shape to the muzzle of the bull, okay? And it's created this lovely space between the 2 objects. Again here, she's created this lovely shape with her arm and the nice long thin shape of her body. And finally, the woman on the right has used her arm to create a shape by holding on to her hip, which just creates a little bit more intrigue. Okay, so now we're going to go on to wildlife photography. So, wildlife photography, here we go. Wildlife photography is created to show animals in their natural habitat, okay? So, where they live, how they live, as they go about their normal life without human interference. And it aims to show the individual personalities of the animals. Okay, I love this photo of the puffins at the bottom because the puffin on the left's holding all the fish and the puffin on the right is looking as if to say, are you going to share those with me? Like, are you going to give some to me, or are you going to keep them all yourself? And again, on the right-hand side, the hare just peeking up with all this very ethereal colours and soft light. It looks like it's looking at the photographer thinking, well, who are you? What do you want? Taking the perfect wildlife photography photo, requires a lot of patience, okay? You need to wait and wait and wait to see these animals. First of all, for them to appear, okay? For them to feel comfortable with you in their presence. But then to show their personality, you could be sitting for hours and hours and hours and then only have a few seconds to take the photo. And in that time, you have to not only get your camera ready to go, but get the animal in the best part of the picture. So you want to be using the rule of thirds. You want to be thinking about the background, okay? And we talked about focal lengths, and you would be using a telephoto lens, okay? So telephoto lenses are where you can zoom in, so you can be quite a distance away from the animal without disturbing them, but you can still get the detail. But as we talked about in that video, there are negatives to using telephoto lenses. They can, if you make a slight movement, it's going to blur the photo. They are much darker than using just a normal lens, so you have to think about that. You have to think about your aperture. And they're very, very heavy. I read some tips about taking wildlife photography, and a man was talking about the fact that he'd had a tripod fitted into his car because it was too heavy to carry the tripod and the camera, so he used his car. And finally, you don't need to focus on what they call the megafauna, okay? You don't need to focus on the big animals. All of the photos here are showing the big animals, but you need to look at leaves, look at trees, look at the shapes that the plants are making or insects are creating, and look and try and take photos of those. So wildlife photography started in the 1900s, and it was a hobby, mainly for safari hunters who realised that hunting the animals was obviously violent and unnecessary. So they saw this photography as a less violent way to remember their adventures on safari. As I said, it can be very demanding and expensive. If you're travelling off to Africa, or if you're going off even in this country, spending days and days waiting for these photos to be taken, obviously in that time you're not making money. So you've just got to sit there and wait and try and get the best photo possible. And it requires patience and persistence. Okay, like I said, you need to wait long periods of time, and then you only have a few seconds to get the best photo possible. That isn't blurry, that has the right background, that has a good contrast. Okay, so it's a very demanding career, but obviously a very rewarding career. So someone who's made a whole career about it is a Dutch wildlife photographer called Frans Lanting. He was born in 1951, so that would make him 69. You can see here are some of his famous photos. And what has he used? Which composition tips has he used to be the best, to get the best photos? So you can see he's filled the frame. So if we look at this top one with the penguin, the baby penguin, the chick, he could have taken a photo of the mother and the chick at the same time, but it would have lost some interest. So we already know what a penguin looks like, okay? He really wanted to focus in on the chick, okay? And I think it makes a really interesting photo because we can imagine what the mum looks like, and the chick is just sitting there looking very cute. And we've probably got more detail there than we would do in normal photos. They've also thought about the rule of thirds. So of all the photos, not the one of the elephants or the one of the penguins at the bottom, but the rest, if you look, none of the photos are in the centre, and that's because he has employed the rule of thirds. The wild cat here, they're off to the left-hand side, and the tail just helps us look across the rest of the image. He's also used a lot of reflection. So there's two images here. We've got the elephants with their reflection in the water, and this bird who's hiding his face, maybe having a bath in the water. He's used reflections, okay? It makes the image a lot more interesting. And finally, he's thought about his background. So if we look at this image of the penguins, we can't see any one penguin in full detail, not from top to bottom, but we know what penguins look like. And as your eye scans across, you think, wow, they're all penguins. And as you get to the back, all of a sudden, you're confronted with these amazing backdrops of the mountains. Okay, so there's some ideas of composition for when you're taking your wildlife photos. So what would I like you to do? So I'd like you first of all to just go and have a look at different types of fashion and wildlife photographers. Have a look at their photos. Have they used the different composition tips that we've talked about? Why do you think those photographers have become successful? And then have a go at setting up your own shoots, okay? Go outside in your garden or on your daily exercise, take your phone with you and take some photos of what you see. You might see some beautiful leaves, you might see some bushes, you might see some birds, okay? Take photos, and then have you got a brother or sister who will be your willing fashion model? Can you set up a fashion shoot? And I'm really looking forward to seeing all of your photos. I hope everyone's keeping well. Send me what you've got and take care. All right then, bye.